Your absence from the avoidant person's life is hitting them with devastating force they never anticipated, never prepared for, never believed was possible based on their defensive assumptions about how they'd feel once they created the distance they claimed to need, or once you finally stopped tolerating their patterns and removed yourself from their life. And the intensity of the impact is shocking to them because they genuinely expected to feel relief. They expected to feel freed from the pressure and the intimacy and the expectations that your presence created. They expected their life to improve once you were gone, and they could return to their defended independence without the complications that a relationship with you required. But instead of relief, they're experiencing a devastating absence that permeates every aspect of their life, making them realize too late that you weren't the burden or the pressure they framed you as, but were actually the person who made their defended life tolerable. You were the one who provided meaning and connection and warmth that kept their isolation from feeling unbearable, who gave them a reason to engage with life rather than just withdrawing from it completely. Your absence is hitting them hard through constant reminders of what's missing. They reach for their phone to share something with you and remember you're not there to share with anymore. They experience something that would have been meaningful with you present and feel the hollowness of experiencing it alone. They navigate their days without the structure and purpose that your presence provided. They face their defended isolation without the buffer of your connection that made that isolation feel like chosen independence rather than like the lonely prison it actually is. The impact intensifies rather than fading because time reveals the depth and extent of what you provided that they took for granted. Not just romantic partnership, but friendship, emotional support, witness to their life. You were the person who made their experiences meaningful by sharing them, a source of motivation to be better and do better, a connection to their authentic self they can only access with someone who sees beneath their defenses. They're discovering that you weren't a replaceable component of their life, but were fundamental infrastructure supporting their entire existence. And removing that infrastructure has caused a collapse they're experiencing as depression, emptiness, and an inability to find satisfaction in anything, a constant awareness of the hole your absence created that nothing and no one can fill, because what you provided was specific to you and to what you uniquely offered them, despite their patterns making that offering costly to you and ultimately unsustainable for your well-being. The specific ways your absence is devastating them beyond what they expected. The avoidant person's experience of your absence manifests in specific, concrete ways that are far more devastating than they anticipated, revealing the depth of their dependence on you that their defensive system prevented them from recognizing while you were present. Understanding these specific manifestations reveals how profoundly you impacted their life and how catastrophic the loss of you has been for them. Your absence is devastating them through a pervasive loneliness that they cannot escape or rationalize away as chosen solitude. The avoidant expected that being alone would feel like freedom, like relief from relationship pressures, like a return to comfortable independence. But what they're experiencing is a crushing loneliness that feels nothing like the independence they romanticized. They're alone, not by empowering choice, but by consequence of their patterns driving away the one person who made aloneness tolerable through periodic connection. This loneliness permeates everything. They wake up lonely. They go through their day lonely. They go to sleep lonely. Activities they used to enjoy feel empty without you to share them with. Places they used to frequent feel hollow without your presence. The loneliness isn't just about missing a romantic partner. It's about missing the one person who truly knew them, who they could be authentic with, who made their life feel less isolated. This loneliness is worse than anything they experienced before you, because before you, they didn't know what they were missing, but now they do. Your absence is devastating them through the loss of meaning and purpose that you provided without them recognizing it was you providing it. The avoidant discovers that you gave their life meaning in ways they didn't appreciate while you were present. Accomplishments feel pointless without you to share them with. Goals feel unmotivating without you as a witness to their progress. Daily activities feel like going through the motions without you as a reason to engage fully. They realize now that a significant source of their motivation and their sense of purpose came from you, from wanting to be better for you, from having someone who cared about their growth, from mattering to someone who saw their potential. Without you, they're discovering their life feels meaningless in ways that reveal how much meaning you were providing, how much you were the why beneath many of their whats. Your absence is devastating them through the inability to share experiences, which automatically makes those experiences feel incomplete and unsatisfying. The avoidant realizes that experiencing things without you to share them with fundamentally changes the quality of the experiences. They see something beautiful and automatically think to tell you about it, then remember they can't. They have an insight or realization and want your perspective, then remember you're not available to discuss it. They accomplish something and want your acknowledgement, then remember you're gone. This constant impulse to share with you, followed by the crash of remembering they can't, creates an ongoing grief cycle throughout every day. But more devastating is the recognition that experiences without you feel incomplete. The beauty isn't as beautiful. The insight isn't as meaningful. The accomplishment isn't as satisfying. They're discovering that you were the person who made experiences meaningful by witnessing them, and without your witness, life feels flat and unsatisfying. Your absence is devastating them through the loss of the person who understood them at a depth no one else reached, leaving them feeling unknown and isolated in ways they didn't experience before meeting you. The avoidant took for granted that you saw beneath their defenses, understood their wounds, and recognized their patterns as protection rather than as their true nature. They didn't fully appreciate how rare this understanding was until they lost it. Now they interact with others who only see their defended surface, who don't get them, who can't reach the authentic self that you accessed. This makes them feel fundamentally alone in ways they didn't feel before you. Before you, they didn't know what being truly seen felt like, so not being seen was their normal. But now they've experienced being known deeply, and losing that creates profound isolation because they understand what they're missing. They understand the difference between superficial relating and the depth of understanding you provided. Your absence is devastating them through the failure of their attempts to replace what you provided, proving your irreplaceability in ways that make the loss permanent. The avoidant tries to replace you. They date others, they pursue friendships, they attempt to find what they had with you elsewhere, but everyone falls short. No one understands them like you did. No one creates the same safety. No one has your patience or your depth or your capacity to see them. The constant failure to replace you reinforces your irreplaceability. Each failed attempt makes the loss feel more permanent and creates despair about ever finding what they had with you again. This is particularly devastating because it proves losing you wasn't losing one option among many, but was losing something unique that they're unlikely to ever find again, making the regret about driving you away more acute and more painful. Your absence is devastating them through the loss of stability and emotional regulation you provided that they didn't recognize you were providing. The avoidant is discovering they functioned better when you were in their life. They were more emotionally stable, more regulated, more capable of engaging with life. Your presence provided a stabilizing force, an emotional anchor that helped regulate their system, even though they would have denied this while you were present, because admitting they needed you contradicted their defended independence. Without you, they're more emotionally dysregulated, more prone to depression or anxiety, and less able to manage their emotional states. This deterioration in their functioning reveals you were providing crucial support they took for granted, were serving as external regulation they needed but didn't acknowledge needing. The loss of this support leaves them struggling in ways that prove they were dependent on you, even while claiming to need complete independence. Your absence is devastating them through constant, intrusive reminders of you that they cannot control or eliminate despite trying to distract themselves. The avoidant finds that everything reminds them of you. Songs you shared, places you went together, activities you did, even things unrelated to your relationship somehow trigger thoughts of you. These constant reminders are torture because they cannot escape them, cannot create enough distance to avoid being reminded, and cannot distract themselves effectively because everything circles back to thoughts of you. The intrusiveness of these reminders reveals how deeply embedded you were in their life, how thoroughly their existence was structured around you even while they maintained the illusion of independence. The inability to escape reminders of you makes moving on impossible and makes their daily life an experience of constant grief rather than the relief they expected. Your absence is devastating them through the comparison between life with you and life without you that proves definitively they were better off with you, despite their patterns suggesting otherwise. The avoidant has a clear comparison now between two states. Life, when you were present with all its complications and discomforts, and life now without you with its supposed freedom and relief. The comparison proves unequivocally they were better off with you. Life with you had difficulties, but also had connection, meaning, motivation, and moments of genuine happiness. Life without you has none of these things, despite having the independence they claim to need. This comparison-based proof that they were wrong, that losing you made their life worse, not better, is devastating because it eliminates any possibility of rationalizing their choice or their patterns as having been correct. They cannot tell themselves they're better off now because the evidence proves otherwise every single day. Why the impact of your absence intensifies over time rather than fading. The avoidant person's experience of your absence doesn't follow the expected grief trajectory where pain is most intense immediately after loss and gradually fades over time. Instead, the impact intensifies, becoming more rather than less devastating as time passes. Understanding why the impact grows reveals the delayed recognition process and the cumulative nature of the losses that your absence creates. The impact intensifies over time because the initial defensive numbness or relief fades, revealing the true extent of the loss beneath the protective layer. Immediately after you leave or after they push you away, the avoidance defensive system creates a protective response. Deactivation that numbs the pain, potential relief at the pressure being removed, defensive narratives that frame the ending as positive. This initial protective response might last days or weeks, creating the illusion that they're fine, that the loss isn't significant, that they were right to create distance. But defensive protections are temporary and unsustainable. As they fade, the true impact emerges. The numbness lifts and the pain underneath is revealed. The relief is replaced by loneliness. The defensive narratives fail to convince. This delayed confrontation with the true extent of the loss means the pain intensifies rather than fading, because they're finally feeling what their defenses initially protected them from feeling. The impact intensifies over time because they discover through living without you what you were providing that they didn't recognize while you were present. Many of the things you provided weren't obvious or dramatic. You weren't solving their problems or dramatically improving their life in visible ways. You were providing subtle, ongoing support, emotional regulation through your steady presence, meaning through being the person who witnessed their life, motivation through caring about their growth, connection to their authentic self through your seeing beneath their defenses. These subtle but crucial provisions only become apparent in their absence. It takes time living without you to recognize what you were providing, and each recognition intensifies the impact of your absence as they discover yet another way you were supporting their well-being that they took for granted. The impact intensifies over time because their attempts to move forward and to replace you consistently fail, with each failure making the loss feel more permanent and more devastating. In the early period after you leave, the avoidant might maintain hope that they'll move on easily, that they'll find someone similar, that the loss is a temporary state rather than a permanent condition. But as they try to date, try to connect with others, try to replace what they had with you. Each attempt fails. No one measures up. No one provides what you provided. These repeated failures accumulate over time, with each one intensifying the impact of your absence by reinforcing that you're irreplaceable, that what they lost is permanent, that they're not going to get over this or find an equivalent connection elsewhere. The accumulation of failed replacement attempts creates an intensifying despair that makes the impact worse months after you leave than it was in the immediate aftermath. The impact intensifies over time because they continue to accumulate experiences and moments they wish they could share with you, with each instance reinforcing what's missing. Every day brings new things that trigger the impulse to share with you. Interesting thoughts, funny moments, difficult situations where they need your perspective, accomplishments they want you to celebrate. Initially, there might be a few of these moments, but they accumulate over time. Day after day, week after week, month after month of having experiences they wish they could share with you, and remembering they can't creates a cumulative grief that intensifies rather than fading. The grief isn't about a single loss, but about ongoing, repeated losses, daily losses of connection, of sharing, of your presence in their life that continue accumulating indefinitely. The impact intensifies over time because they observe their patterns repeating in new situations, proving what you told them about themselves and making your absence feel more regrettable. With time and with attempts at new relationships, the avoidant sees their patterns repeating. They withdraw from someone new. They go hot and cold in familiar ways. They sabotage a developing connection. Each repetition of patterns proves what you told them about themselves was accurate, validates the observations you made, and confirms that their patterns are the problem and not you or the specific relationship. This growing self-awareness makes your absence more regrettable because they recognize you were right. You understood them accurately and they pushed away the person who saw them clearly because they couldn't handle being seen. The regret intensifies with each new confirmation that you were right about them. The impact intensifies over time because key dates and milestones without you emphasize the permanence of your absence in ways the immediate loss doesn't emphasize. The first birthday without you, the first holiday season without you, the first anniversary of a significant relationship moment now experienced alone. These milestones hit harder than the initial loss because they emphasize the permanence, the fact that you're not coming back, the reality that the future will continue to unfold without you in it. Each milestone is a new confrontation with the loss, new evidence of the permanence, a new occasion for grief that intensifies rather than diminishes the overall impact. The accumulation of milestones over time creates an intensifying awareness that this isn't a temporary state, but is a permanent condition of their life. The impact intensifies over time because they see evidence through social media or through mutual friends that you're thriving without them, proving they were more replaceable to you than you were to them. The avoidant sees you moving forward with your life, appearing happy in photos, accomplishing things, clearly building a good life without them. This evidence that you're thriving while they're suffering intensifies the impact by proving the dynamic they believed existed was inverted. They thought they were the more valuable party, the one who would be fine while you struggled. But reality proves the opposite. You're fine or better while they're destroyed. This inversion of their assumptions about who needed whom intensifies the impact by adding a blow to their ego and proof of their miscalculation to the pain of losing you. The impact intensifies over time because they gain perspective on the relationship that makes them recognize what they had and how they treated it, creating regret that grows rather than fading. Immediately after you leave, the avoidance perspective is limited and is colored by their defenses. But with time and distance, perspective shifts. They see more clearly what the relationship was, what you offered, how you treated them versus how they treated you. They recognize with growing clarity how exceptional you were and how poorly they treated something exceptional. This growing clarity and recognition creates intensifying regret because they're seeing their mistakes more clearly, understanding the magnitude of what they lost more fully, and recognizing their culpability more honestly. The regret isn't dulled by time, but is sharpened by it as perspective improves and self-awareness increases. How your absence is destroying the narratives they built to justify their patterns. The avoidant person's defensive system relies on specific narratives they tell themselves about their patterns, about relationships, about what they need, and what serves them. Your absence systematically destroys these narratives by providing experiential evidence that contradicts them. Understanding how your absence dismantles their defensive narratives reveals why the impact is not just emotional, but existential, challenging their entire understanding of themselves and what protects them. Your absence is destroying their narrative that they need independence and freedom above all else by proving their defended independence feels like a prison rather than freedom. The avoidance central narrative is that they need independence, that relationships constrain them, that freedom is what allows them to thrive. This narrative justified their patterns throughout the relationship. Withdrawal was protecting their independence. Distance was maintaining their freedom. Emotional unavailability was preserving their autonomy. But your absence provides an experiential test of this narrative. They have complete independence now. They have total freedom. And it feels nothing like what the narrative promised. It feels like isolation, like a prison, like loneliness rather than liberation. This experiential contradiction destroys the narrative because they cannot maintain the belief that independence is what they need when having it makes them miserable while having you, with all the constraints a relationship entailed, made them better off. Your absence is destroying their narrative that you were the source of pressure and discomfort by proving the discomfort was internal and remains present without you. The avoidant told themselves that you were the source of their discomfort. Your expectations created pressure. Your needs felt overwhelming. Your presence triggered anxiety. This narrative made their patterns seem justified as responses to external pressure you created. But your absence eliminates the supposed source of pressure, and the discomfort remains. They still feel anxious, still feel overwhelmed, still experience the same internal struggles without you there to blame them on. This proves the discomfort was internal, their intimacy anxiety, their fear of vulnerability, their terror of being known, not something you were creating. The narrative collapses because they cannot maintain the belief that you were the problem when removing you from their life didn't remove the problems they attributed to you. Your absence is destroying their narrative that the relationship wasn't that important or that you weren't that special by proving through their suffering how profoundly you mattered. The avoidant protected themselves by minimizing the relationship's importance and your significance, telling themselves it was just one relationship among many, that you were good but not irreplaceable, that losing you wouldn't be that significant. But their actual response to your absence destroys this narrative. They're devastated. They can't stop thinking about you. They can't find anyone who compares to you. They're clearly suffering in ways that prove the relationship was profoundly important and you were exceptionally special. The intensity of their suffering makes the minimization narrative unsustainable because they cannot convince themselves something doesn't matter when its loss is destroying them. Your absence is destroying their narrative that they're better off alone by providing a direct comparison that proves they were better off with you. The avoidant told themselves they function better alone, that relationship complications detract from their well-being, that they're their best self in defended independence. But your absence creates a comparison between two states, life with you versus life without you. And the comparison proves definitively they were better off with you. They were more stable with you, more motivated with you, happier with you, despite the complications the relationship created. The concrete evidence that they're worse off without you destroys the narrative that they're better off alone because they're living the proof that the narrative is false. Your absence is destroying their narrative that relationships are temporary and people are replaceable by proving you specifically are irreplaceable and your loss is permanent. The avoidant protected themselves by believing relationships are inherently temporary, that people are fundamentally interchangeable, that losing one person just means finding another. This narrative minimized the stakes of their patterns and made pushing people away feel less consequential. But your absence is destroying this narrative through their inability to replace you, through the growing recognition that you are unique in what you provided, through the time passing without the pain diminishing or without an equivalent connection materializing. They're discovering that you specifically are irreplaceable and that this loss is permanent in ways that contradict their narrative about impermanence and replaceability. Your absence is destroying their narrative that their patterns protect them from pain by proving their patterns created the pain they're experiencing. The avoidant believed their defensive patterns protected them. Withdrawal protected against rejection. Emotional distance protected against abandonment. Independence protected against loss. The patterns were justified as self-protection, as ways to minimize suffering. But your absence reveals the patterns created suffering rather than preventing it. Their withdrawal drove you away. Their emotional distance cost them the relationship. Their insisted upon independence resulted in the isolation they're now suffering in. The patterns didn't protect them from pain. They created catastrophic pain by destroying a relationship that could have provided what they needed if they'd been capable of receiving it. This experiential proof that their patterns are counterproductive destroys the core narrative that justified those patterns. Your absence is destroying their narrative that they don't need anyone by proving their dependence on you through their suffering in your absence. The avoidance self-image centers on not needing anyone, on being self-sufficient, on not depending on others for their well-being. This narrative allowed them to justify emotional unavailability and to resist genuine intimacy. But their suffering in your absence proves they did need you. They needed your emotional support, your presence, your witness to their life, your connection. The intensity of their suffering reveals a dependence they denied while you were present. They cannot maintain the narrative of not needing anyone when your absence has devastated them in ways that prove they needed you profoundly, that they were dependent on what you provided, that their self-sufficiency was an illusion that your presence maintained by providing what they claimed not to need. Your absence is destroying their narrative about who they are and what they're capable of by forcing recognition of their dysfunction in ways their defenses previously prevented. The avoidant maintained a particular self-image, a person who values independence, who has legitimate self-protective patterns, who makes rational choices about relationships. But your absence and their response to it challenges this entire self-understanding. They're forced to recognize they are a person whose patterns destroy what they value, whose self-protection actually creates self-destruction, whose choices weren't rational but were driven by wounds and fears. This forced recognition of their dysfunction, of the gap between who they thought they were and who their behavior proves they are, destroys the narrative of their identity in ways that create an existential crisis alongside the emotional crisis of losing you. What the intensity of their reaction to your absence means for your healing. The avoidant person's intense reaction to your absence, the fact that it's hitting them hard and intensifying over time, has specific implications for your own healing and your understanding of what happened. Understanding what their reaction means helps you interpret the situation accurately while maintaining boundaries that serve your well-being rather than their suffering.